internet's vulnerability being exposed in the last couple of days following the recent WannaCry cyber attack that impacted more than 100 countries and had made, for example, the British national health system grind to a halt at least for a couple of hours over the weekend. We thought we should discuss how companies and individuals can best protect themselves against cyber attacks. This is the MoneyMakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield. I'm joined by Mustafa Al-Bassam and Sebastian Strobl from Cognosec GmbH, who both represent the black and white hats in the world of hackers. Black and white hats. Neither of you is wearing a hat. What's a black, what's a white hat? Is one of you wear one and the other one wear the other?
So black hat and white hat. Black hats are basically hackers that hack outside of the law illegally, essentially the malicious hackers. And white hats are hackers that work for companies and get paid to test company security. Were you both black hats at one point?
You could say so, because there's a point where you're not employed. Basically, you play around with computers, and yeah, that's the first experience you make.
I mean, anecdotally, people say that you give youngsters computers, they get bored with playing games, and they start testing security systems.
That's what happens.
That's how you learn the craft, I suppose. Catch Me If You Can. That was that Leonardo DiCaprio movie. He's a guy who got into hacking, he got into scams, and ended up working for the FBI. Is that what happens in the real world?
Sometimes. I mean, it's common for young people to be interested in computers when they're younger and get in trouble a little bit. Usually what happens is they hack their school computers or whatever, or bypass the internet restrictions, and then they kind of realize they have an interest in cybersecurity, and then they get a job in cybersecurity.
Nowadays you have organizations basically trying to set up hacking contests that are totally legal. They want to attract young people to show their skill set, and that's how they recruit new talents. So it's going in the other direction, where you don't need to be a black hat to get a good job. Okay,
but being a black hat doesn't harm your career necessarily, provided you come over to the white hat side before you get caught and get into any serious trouble. I mean, is either of you concerned about the sustainability of the internet in terms of its vulnerabilities? Is it possible? Could you bring down the internet if you wanted to?
I mean, there was a famous testimony in Congress in 1999 or the late 90s, where a bunch of hackers told Congress that they could bring down the internet in 30 minutes, and that was kind of like a really popular thing at the time. Nowadays, it depends on what you mean by bring down the whole internet, but as we've seen, for example, with the WannaCry ransomware, that's basically a situation where almost every single Windows machine was vulnerable to the same vulnerability, so you could have taken over a large portion of the Windows machines in the world.
So the internet itself is not vulnerable, but machines are, individual machines. I get an email into my machine and I click yes on a button. I'd love to have a look at this particular link. It opens up, and the next thing, ransomware is deposited onto my system, and I get a little message up saying, pay me 1,000 bitcoins, otherwise you're not going to access your data ever again. At that point, I've got two choices. I can either pay, or I can throw the computer away.
Yeah, that's what you could do. I mean, first thing is, that's only one way to get infected by this malware, because it spreads out using a Windows vulnerability.
Using a what?
Vulnerability in the operating system, sorry. So that means you don't need to basically click on an email. You just connect your computer to the internet. That's all you need to do when you have an unpatched operating system. And that's what a lot of people don't care about, right?
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of us are completely ignorant about the security system. We subscribe to an antivirus program. We can't really remember when last we updated it, and the update flashes in your face every time you log onto your computer. You go, oh, I'm in a hurry now, I'll do it next time. You ignore it, and the very next thing, there's a worm going around your computer because you've logged into the company network and somebody else had downloaded the virus, and the next thing, you're infected.
Yeah, so, I mean, the whole reason why ransomware, this WannaCry ransomware was so successful is because it was impacting machines that haven't updated their software. Actually, the patch for the vulnerability that WannaCry was exploiting was released by Microsoft 3 months ago. So the companies that are being impacted by this ransomware today are the companies that haven't updated their software. So this is why it's very important to make sure that your software is up to date, so that any vulnerabilities on your systems can be patched.
And that's absolutely critical. I mean, so when you look at what WannaCry has achieved, are you a little bit jealous, thinking, oh, that's good work? This is the work of an artist, of a master of the dark craft.
Not really, to be honest, because it's
you become so pious
nowadays
since you put on a white hat.
Nowadays, it's not very hard to set up malware or build a virus, because you know there's even kits available you buy for $1,000 that allows you per click, just you click a few buttons just to customize your virus, and then you can have it spread all over the world. So it's very easy, and there's only a few very good programmers that program those scripts or software that will be part of the malware that is spreaded. And those guys, they are good programmers, but there's thousands of others out there.
I mean, the interesting thing about the WannaCry ransomware is that it was using a cyber weapon or an exploit that was actually developed by the NSA. And
the National Security Agency in the United States.
Yes, and this cyber weapon was leaked a few months ago, and so the authors of this ransomware were just simply using that cyber weapon in their ransomware to make it spread. But the ransomware itself isn't very advanced. It's quite amateur actually, if you look at it, and it's very easy nowadays, as Sebastian said, to buy a kit that would let you create your own ransomware. It's a big industry nowadays.
So when you look at WannaCry, does it look like the work of professionals? Does it look like the work of a bunch of amateurs? Does it look like the work of a state agency? Because there have been some allegations that it may very well be.
Well, there's been some allegations that it was the work of North Korea, but the evidence is very substantial and not sufficient. But in terms of the actual architecture of the virus and the code itself, it's very amateur in terms of how it was developed. It doesn't really work very well, and the decryption feature, if you want to get your files back and if you pay up, doesn't even work. So if you actually pay the ransom, they wouldn't actually even get your files back anyway.
So how then do you get your files back? You get infected, your computer shuts down, there's a message blinking at you saying pay 50 bitcoins, otherwise you don't get your data back. You pay, you don't get your data back. Is there a way around it?
Ideally you have a backup of your data somewhere lying around.
Of course you do. We all do that, don't we?
Yes, exactly. Otherwise, I mean, you have to wait until some of the hackers release a method to basically get your data back, and that happened a couple of times. Or, I mean, just set up a new computer and try to recreate your documents.
But it's quite scary. If it is amateurish and if it is not particularly sophisticated, why was it so successful? I mean, yes, it exploited this gap in people updating their Microsoft, but I mean, it does suggest that there is an extraordinary level of vulnerability in all of our laptops.
I mean, it was only a matter of time that someone actually took this NSA exploit and put it in a piece of ransomware. Anyone could have done it actually, and researchers have been warning about this months before this ransomware happened, right? But people didn't listen to the warnings. All you had to do is someone that had the time to do it or wanted to do it. And actually, this is actually the first virus that used this NSA exploit. There's been previous viruses. It was revealed today that there's a virus that's 1 week older than this virus that used this exploit. That was a silent virus that was simply mining cryptocurrency in the background.
I mean, all of this stuff is happening every single day of the week. I mean, and it's quite frightening to those of us who are outside of your particular world. I mean, are you seeing advances in the way in which these cyber attacks have been staged and being carried out?
Well, you mean, do the attacks advance?
Yes. Are you seeing advancements in the way in which people are doing it, or is it all pretty clunky, clumsy, amateurish sort of stuff?
Most of these computer viruses or malware are using the same principles and the same distribution mechanisms.
So can we not build walls around our computers to do that?
Yes, we can. And it's up to us basically to raise the awareness for us as companies, as organizations working in industry, for researchers to raise awareness and make sure that not only people know about security, computer security, also vendors like Microsoft or other vendors that produce operating systems are fast enough, or maybe it is easy enough to update your computer. You maybe, I mean,
should my computer be doing it itself by now? I mean,
yes,
Apple prides itself on automatically building defenses around its operating system, and that's what makes it very popular amongst a certain group of operators. But Microsoft should surely be sending automatic updates.
I think, and by default, most of the operating systems nowadays are configured to do that, to basically update your computer when you are away from the computer overnight. So that's not something that, but people turn it off. Organizations, because there's a lot of organizations that were hit by the malware, they have their own patching and updating mechanisms. They don't use the auto-update function sometimes, and that's what happened. Like, there's legacy systems, there's old computers standing around in the corner, and those are the computers that got infected.
Yeah, no, it's quite scary. I mean, do you anticipate that people are going to use this, what do you call it, the NSA?
NSA exploits.
The NSA exploits, that we're going to see more of this and perhaps more efficiently structured, better quality hacks coming up?
So this is kind of the problem with intelligence agencies hoarding cyber weapons and exploits. The NSA has been developing exploits to hack into computers and software that we all use for the past decade, and they've managed to lose control of these exploits. And so we've been seeing a lot of leaks recently of leaked NSA cyber weapons and exploits. And actually, the group that was responsible for leaking these exploits, shadow brokers, have actually promised that in June, they're actually going to be launching this monthly subscription service for people who want access to NSA exploits. So we're definitely going to be seeing a lot more of this in the future. And this is kind of a more systematic problem with the way that governments deal with cybersecurity and kind of intelligence.
Are we getting any better at tracking down the hackers?
The shadow brokers hackers, which have
the shadow brokers are these guys who operate in the dark web, this impenetrable pool of deep and mysterious activity that happens on the internet.
Well, hackers aren't perfect; they make mistakes. It's not if law enforcement is well resourced enough, it's not too difficult to find the hacker. The hackers get arrested all the time, even if they try to hide their IP address or try to hide their location. The dark web isn't foolproof.
Okay, well that's good news at least. But I mean, who's actually, is there a global sort of cybersecurity Interpol, if you like? Is anybody taking sort of global responsibility for the fight against hacking?
I wouldn't say. There's a lot of national organizations that try to set up like response teams, and that's in place for years now. And there's
it's not very effective though.
Well, for us as normal users, it's not very effective. But for organizations, it can be effective, basically, to be linked to those organizations and be able to be informed about threats.
But it's a great private sector opportunity, though.
It is, and there's a lot of companies that try to do that. But you know, nobody's perfect, and there's no silver bullet, so there can't be one single organization. I think that needs to be triggered by government and by standards and regulation and law.
Yeah, certainly. It's an exciting time that we are living in. Mustafa Al-Bassam and Sebastian Strobl from Cognosec GmbH. They are visiting a conference in Johannesburg right now, talking about hacks and attacks, and their timing is absolutely perfect. Why are they in town this week? What did they know when they accepted the booking? What did they know would be happening on the dark side of the cyber world? But do thank you for watching, and don't click on any suspicious links or answer any dodgy phone calls. And if somebody says they're from Microsoft, put down the phone. Nobody from Microsoft ever for any phones, do they? No, they don't. Thanks for watching. Good night.
The third Discovery Financial Planning Summit is taking place on the 29th of May 2017 and features some of the world's industry-leading keynote speakers in the field of financial planning. The summit will address key trends facing advisors in 2017 and beyond. Financial planners have a more pivotal role to play than ever before. This full-day event offers you the opportunity to hear how to embrace technology and more effectively connect with clients, gain insights into global investment strategies and market outlooks. Please go to financialplanning